three.
Audacity in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And today's episode, we're going to take you back in time.
Yeah, and we're going to share with you a full day of eating now versus back then.
Yes, so this is a really fun idea because I think it really speaks to how we have evolved over time with just our philosophies, with training and nutrition, obviously nutrition specifically this time. So I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun, like a good
Yeah.
reflection episode. So I guess, do you want to start chronologically? So maybe go back before we even found anything reliable fitness related.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of like a good way to go. So I don't know, I'm going to take us all the way back to high school. So super long time ago. I was conscious. I've always been very conscious of my weight and my size, going all the way back to elementary school.
Wow.
But I'd say, yeah, I had, I developed very quickly. So I had stretch marks on my thighs, really early on. It's I was always very, very conscious of stuff like that. But back in high school, so again, I was aware of things. And I think that we had the idea that oh, we probably shouldn't eat 10 slices of pizza and probably shouldn't have 10 cookies all at the same time, so I was aware of things. But I kind of at the same time just ate whatever I wanted. So at the time, my boyfriend and I would run across the street to Wendy's and get chicken salad or the chicken sandwiches. And I don't know, I just would eat anything I wanted. But I was also never really very happy with how I looked. I wasn't overweight by any means, but I just didn't really care and just ate whatever.
Yeah. I think I'm actually some differences in that. I don't think I noticed or even thought about what body image even was until probably sophomore year of high school. I didn't know, just really didn't think about it at all. I can remember when I became aware of it, I would look back on pictures of me in 7th and 8th grade and be like, oh my gosh, how did I let myself get like that or whatever. So I ate a lot of fast food growing up, but I also had a great mom who loved feeding me fruit. It's the Asian love language, if you don't know. So an Asian mom's love language is cutting up fruit and giving it to her kid. And so that's a common thread amongst most people that I meet that have Asian moms. But so that, and she would always steam green beans or broccoli, and she'd just put it on the side of whatever crap meal I'd be eating. So it'd be mac and cheese, processed hot dogs, and then steamed broccoli. And those would be my meals. And so I had a foundation of eating fruits and vegetables, which was really good because I obviously know people, and I'm sure people listening to this know people or are people that don't enjoy vegetables. Aaron's one of those, and it's hard to overcome that in your adulthood. So I was happy about that, but I would still eat a big breakfast with hotcakes from McDonald's before playing a day of volleyball, which makes me kind of want to puke saying that out loud, but that's what I felt was good fuel at the time. And then I guess when I started getting aware of things, it was about the time where social media was starting to be a thing, my sophomore year of high school, where it was very easy for me to then do a deep dive into everything that we'll talk about. But I kind of went from 0 to 100.
Yeah. I would say and even to this day, I actually don't eat out that much. And I think it was just kind of how I was raised. So my mom and dad were separated, and I felt like they both still cooked very similarly. My dad, we always joke that the meal, if we were coming over to his house, we're oh, what are you making for dinner? He'd be oh, chicken, broccoli, and rice. Because we felt that's all he made growing up, which is so funny looking back on it.
That's
it's
yeah,
such a bro meal. But he would cook all the time. We ate really well. And I didn't like veggies, but I would eat them, or I would try to. So I feel kind of same. I didn't eat the best, but I also didn't eat the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely relate in that I ate pretty much what I wanted up to that point where like the tables turned. And definitely just enjoyed myself. Like I've always been a plate cleaner. I've always,
Yep.
well, at that point in my life, definitely had always been a plate cleaner, had always been, you know, eating to the point of being stuffed rather than the point of just being satisfied.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so those habits definitely carried over into some other things. So do you want to move into the next phase?
Yeah, I will definitely say though, I did struggle a little bit with like disordered eating in middle school, which I know is like taking us a little bit further back. But I definitely had some unhealthy eating behaviors because again, very conscious of how I looked, and I try to like not eat breakfast and not eat lunch, and then I'd eat dinner, and like obviously like that's all I knew is like, oh, eat less. So I did like I dabbled, I guess, a little bit in that. I don't know, that's like a weird way to describe it, but once we graduated high school and I moved on to college, like this is, I feel like a big pivotal moment for most people because they go from like having their parents, give them food and make dinners to like you're on your own and you get to make your own decisions. And, we had, like most people do, you have a meal plan. And so you get to use that at like different places around campus. And so I remember we had this place right next door to our dorm was like a big all you can eat buffet essentially, but it was like a salad place. So it was like a salad bar.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so it was really cool. And like looking back now, I'm like, oh man, I'd love to take advantage of that. But you basically have this big, like, you could just, I don't know, like plate or like a to-go box and can just fill up however much you wanted. And it was like a lump sum of, whatever. But I remember I would start making like a transition to trying to eat healthier. So like they had whole wheat pasta and then they had like regular pasta and they had Alfredo sauce and like marinara sauce. And I remember like trying to be healthy and like I didn't like whole wheat. I didn't like red sauce, but I try to like mix everything together to like ease my way into like eating healthy and like trying different vegetables and things like that. But at some point I transitioned from like not really caring to trying to eat healthier to being like super bro. And I think it was right around the time when like Oxygen magazine was like really big and I started to get more into fitness. And my mom subscribed me to that back when magazines were still a thing. And they like preached clean eating and like you shouldn't eat carbs, you shouldn't eat sugar and like all these things. And I was like, yes, that makes so much sense. And so I started running a lot in the morning. So I'd like run and then I would come home and like lie on the go, like I hate to call it lunch, but I kind of skip breakfast and have like a smoothie. And then I'd have like a salad with chicken or a smoothie or like rice cakes and protein. I'd have something like quote unquote clean for dinner. And then probably by the end of the night when I was studying, I'd have like a couple bowl of cereals because I was hungry.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I think it was maybe around sophomore year is when I really had that transition to like clean eating. So that was probably like what, 2009, 2010, right around that time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it was like the dawn of social media. So this was probably, and this just shows our age difference, but
I
the dawn
know.
of social media was like 2012, 2013, kind of was getting into that. And that was like when I was in high school. And so, yeah, Instagram was starting to become a thing. And I was deep into that rabbit hole. Like I've always just been on Instagram, like, since the beginning of it, and just like that's been my main platform really. But I was also very big into Tumblr, and Tumblr can be pretty toxic. It's like mainly like at least from the people that I followed, it was a lot of like my life sucks, moody, like venting and like just idolizing things that were super unrealistic. And so basically like you'd follow like pictures of skinny bodies and like really healthy meal ideas and smoothies and salads and this and that. So like that was like what I was surrounding myself with at the time. Once I really started to be more aware of like body image, body fat. And I think it stemmed from the fact that I was actually playing on a volleyball team with girls older than me. Not just in like high school volleyball, where like I was like on the varsity team and there was seniors and juniors and stuff, but I think it was also like that club season in my sophomore year. I was playing a year up. I gotten moved onto the team, and like I didn't really like know how to get along with, and for some reason 1 year for me was like the most intimidating thing in the whole entire world. I was like, oh my god, these girls are 17 and I'm 16, so we can't be friends. Like that's like what I had in my head. And now it's crazy because like I'm friends with people 10 years older than me and like all of this, and it doesn't make a difference. But you know, when you're younger, that stuff makes a difference. And I think because they were more like aesthetically conscious, body conscious, and would make comments about those things about themselves, I started to be like, oh, what do I look like? And so that kind of started that spiral. So I did start everything with MyFitnessPal. And so I allude back to that a lot on my social media, but like I literally, like the first time I ever tried to quote unquote diet or eat better was by tracking my food on MyFitnessPal. So, you know, it spat out 1,200, 1,300 calories. That's what I tried to hit. I remember it would always bounce between like maybe 1,200, 1,400. So like, you know, a modest deficit with air quotes. But it was basically like a really hybrid version of like clean eating and eat everything that looks pretty and fruity and vegetable-y, plus trying to hit 12 to 1,400 calories per day. And mind you, I was probably playing volleyball at least 15 hours a week at the time. so yeah, that was where it started.
So when you were talking about Tumblr and like technology, my mind went back down to rabbit hole. Do you remember Zanga? Did you ever have one of those?
Oh my God. I don't know if it was that I had, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. Those like little blogs that we all like wrote about our day back. It's like an open face diary. And we were like doing code and like,
yeah. I remember I taught myself code for like very, very rudimentary code for something at that age. And I can't remember what it was for.
I think it was Zanga when you would do code and you'd get like music onto your page and stuff like that.
It's
like
basically like making websites, right?
Yeah, but like for dummies. I don't know. Yeah. So I just thought of that. So throwback for all of you guys if you were my age. But yeah, no, I mean I feel like we're very synced up, but it was just in like different periods of our life. Yeah. So like when you talk about like Instagram becoming a thing, that was like what you said, like 2012, 2013. So that was like my senior year of college / when I graduated college. So that's when I kind of transitioned from being a super clean eater to potentially trying if it fits your macros, because Instagram was a thing and I started following like cover models from Oxygen, and then I'd found like more and more people, and that's when I started seeing people competing, and then they were like, oh, I can compete and eat Pop-Tarts and still get shredded. And I was like, ooh, I like this, like tell me more. And so that was right around when like Lane Norton was blowing up, and then IIFYM became a thing. And so I've talked about this many times. Like I still remember like sitting there and entering in things on MyFitnessPal, and then at the end of the night being like, I'm going to have a Skinny Cow ice cream and I'm not going to feel guilty about it because this fits within my macros. And I remember eating it and being like, oh my God, I didn't die. Like everything is still okay. And so I feel like the pendulum kind of swung in the opposite direction. And now it's kind of like, well, now what else can I fit into my day? Like what else can I try to cram in? So I remember having these big like froyo bowls where it's like the
Those
protein.
were the shit.
Yeah, the protein base, and then like all these like Oreos and Pop Tarts and like Quest bars, and like remember throwing those in the microwave.
Yeah, yeah, literally taking a Quest bar and fucking microwaving it. So it became
Yeah.
just like a soggy mess. And for some reason, that was a dessert that you put whipped cream on top of
I mean,
and
like
enjoyed.
I am not gonna knock them. Like I loved their old formula
Oh yeah,
bars.
no, I love them. I still eat them to
I
this
will
day.
too. I mean, the new ones just aren't as good. I mean, but the apple pie ones, like putting in the oven, oof, I still consider that a dessert. They're really good.
To be honest, to this day, the only one I eat is the chocolate chip cookie dough, and it's mainly
Yeah.
because the chunks in it are just like huge fucking chunks of chocolate. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm there for that. That's pretty much it. And then like also like some protein.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Little lots of fiber.
yeah, too much
um
fiber.
so
Ooh.
yeah, so we kind of like swung in the opposite direction. It was like how much crap can I fit into my day? But I will say though, like I still felt like I prioritized micronutrients. Like I didn't go like completely IIFYM. Like I still was like making sure I hit like my vitamin A and vitamin C, and I was paying attention to fiber. So I still did a pretty good job, but it was definitely more heavy on like the treat side of
Yeah,
things.
it's just the headspace that you're in, right? It's like you spent all that time, and I did the exact same thing, spending all that time thinking I couldn't have these things or trying to find the healthier version, right? Like,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
what is it? Like I would try to get like the really bitter, like dark chocolate and try to convince myself that I liked it because it was like healthy, quote
Yep.
unquote. But
Yep.
yeah, when that started taking off was like, I was just kind of getting into it and that narrative started to shift. So that's why I kind of started with the calorie tracking. And then as I kind of got more and more into it, I started to realize like, okay, like maybe I can have, and I think I saw it for probably a year and a half at least, and kind of watched people, eat their sweet foods or like, their cookies or their ice cream or whatever. And I didn't do it. I remember I would be very, very restrictive, like all through high school, basically until kind of the end of high school when I started to really make that shift for myself. So it took me until maybe 2014, 2015 to like actually start experimenting with myself on it and like just give it a shot. So that was kind of the next phase for me as well, was around the time that I was graduating high school. I've kind of told this story before, but that's when I went kind of volleyball was over and head dove into like the bodybuilding idea and ideal, because I had a front desk job at the gym part-time while I was finishing up high school, and I was just at the gym all the time if I wasn't, within the school walls. And because of that, I was eating a lot of protein bars, having a lot of protein shakes. I was doing the protein yogurt bowls, um, and just a lot of, yeah, as many treats as I could possibly fit, and was starting to like restrict less. I remember I was eating, maybe 1600, 1700 calories, which again, still definitely a deficit for a lot of women. But I was kind of starting to break that mold and really like buy into those narratives that were shifting in kind of the industry as well. So big pendulum shift. But yeah, what
Yeah.
came next for you?
So once I kind of dabbled into macros, again, right around, we're definitely on the same timeline. So 2014 was when I started tracking macros, and I started competing, or I started my first prep in 2015. So March of 2015. And I did macros like the entire prep, even all the way up until I actually ended up switching coaches like the last like 4 weeks or something, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something in my prep. And I still did everything macro based, but I was able to do that. And then I struggled a lot more with how I looked because once you compete, you just have like a very skewed body image. And I didn't go like I did go a little bit overboard as far as eating. I would go like to macros to like oh, now I'm not competing, so I can eat whatever I want. And so I was really hard on myself going from situations where I could eat things and then have to like feel like, oh no, I need to be tracking again, and then like struggling with tracking. So, um, I mean, I feel like it's kind of off topic because my food, like I was still macro based, but I was having issues with the idea of like tracking and not tracking, and having like structure, like it was kind of like that all or nothing mentality. So it was
Yeah.
either like I had to be tracking and being on my plan, or I was doing awful and I was like, well, I might as well just like not track the rest of the week because I screwed up. So that's kind of like what I struggled with a lot in like 2015, end of 2015, and then into 2016 before I started another prep, which was probably
Yeah.
not healthy.
Which is probably just you trying to make up for the mistakes, right?
Well,
Which is what
yeah.
a
And
lot of
then,
people fall into.
yeah. And I got to a point where I was like, okay, now I'm really unhappy with my body image. Let's start a prep again, which is looking back on it, I should have healed and worked on some things. But that's kind of what we did back then. We jumped into another season.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, oh man, I kind of lost my train of thought, but kind of building off of where I was then. So I had kind of head dove into the bodybuilding idea and finished high school, and basically just kind of lifted all the time. I was then in a new relationship at the time, so I was eating out a lot more, and like honestly, it was just Chipotle, like literally every other day. Like it was only Chipotle, but was eating out more. And I think because I was like tracking my food, but naively doing so, I was like getting like, triple portions like they do at Chipotle, but like tracking it as one. So I was eating more without realizing, and it was definitely benefiting me. I just didn't realize it. And then I started my first prep. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Started my first prep in the spring of 2016. And this was another kind of pendulum shift for me because at the time I was doing a lot of the protein yogurt bowls with a ton of cereal and Quest bars and this and that, and all the ice cream. Literally, like I would buy Arctic Zero, Halo Top, and like the Ben and Jerry's Froyo, and I would eat like ice cream every single night, and I'd make a whole bowl of it with Oreos and all this stuff. And so I hired my first coach at this time in 2016. To this day, love the guy, and he taught me some great stuff.
Well, I was going to
What do
say,
you
fun
say?
fact. So, Marissa, this is when Marissa and I met.
Yeah.
So, her coach and my coach were husband and wife. So, super small world, and just kind of
Yeah.
how we connected.
Yeah. But basically he was very blunt, and I'm sure he is still very blunt to this day. But basically, his words were something along the lines of, I need you to cut the shit out of your diet for prep. Like you need to like do this right. So right at the time was no dairy, no artificial sweetener, and no gluten. I think it was just kind of by default. I didn't have gluten, but like I don't know if that was necessarily a rule, but definitely no dairy and no artificial sweeteners. So I was like, oh shit, like that's I've been living off of ice cream and sugar-free syrup. So I cut that all out for however long my prep was, which I can't remember at this point, 16 weeks, 20 weeks. And that actually caused some digestive upset after the show, because when you cut something like dairy out for a very long time, it actually, your body, I'll phrase it this way, the human body is not meant to produce the lactase enzyme that digests lactose and dairy products. So if you stop eating dairy for a long period of time, it's going to be very hard to reintroduce it. So that's what happened to me. And I was a little intolerant for a little while, had to like rely on those lactate pills.
I
But
remember.
yeah, because I really wanted pizza after that show. But added, I think I reverse dieted fairly well after the first show, or really well for a little while, and then kind of started to relax a little bit. So I don't think I necessarily fell into the all or nothing. I honestly think I like stayed on macros just like gung ho with like all of my, 19-year-old energy at the time. Just like so into all of it. Like this was my entire life. So I definitely wasn't perfect, a few months after the show, but I was
You were
definitely eating.
you were very strict.
For the first like 12, 16 weeks. Yeah. I was like, I know I was dead on. And then after that, I like laxed a little bit, not a ton, but like a little bit. And then kind of cruised into a quote unquote off season for the next year or so. But the whole time, whether I was hitting my macros perfectly or not, I was tracking absolutely everything that went into my mouth. And that was honestly a trend. Like I could pretty much carry that over to with some mindset shifts along the way. Track macros from then to, you know, still now, with some breaks in between.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just so crazy to like look back because we've known each other for so long and we've gone through so many different like periods of life. But yeah, I still remember when we were leaving Virginia and we were getting together and it was like you, me, Kristen, and was it like Callie, I think. And we went out to dinner and it was like I don't know, like a couple weeks or a couple months
Wasn't
post
Brooklyn
show.
there too? Was
No,
that
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 was a
picture that we have?
different like dinner that I'm thinking of. We went to
Oh,
like
okay.
coastal flats.
Okay. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't remember what you got, but I remember we were kind of like trying to be like, hey, try this or order this. And and you entered everything into my fitness pal like perfectly.
Yeah.
um,
I
but
was on
yes,
it.
yeah, you were. But yeah, so I feel like kind of once I would say maybe I mean maybe now more so in like 20 from like 2020 on, I feel like I shifted a little bit and I've like grown up a lot with my approach to nutrition. And
Good way to
I've,
put it.
yeah, or just like more matured. And I don't know if it's from taking time off from competing, but I'm not as like I don't let food control me as much. And I feel like maybe it's just part of like just having a healthier relationship with tracking and food in general. But I think when you go from like a very long period of restriction, it's really hard because you kind of are coming from like a scarcity mindset of like, I'm only in this quote unquote off season for a short amount of time before I go back into prep. So therefore I need to take advantage of this, situation to just taking time off and just like living life and being okay and having balance between going out and like having tacos and margaritas and then, eating some more like micronutrient dense foods the next day and being okay with that balance. So I feel like I've just kind of grown up and I am prioritizing health more, and it's probably because I'm old. um, but just making sure I'm like paying attention to micronutrients and like I'm not I really don't track that much. And like I am starting to a little bit more as I am trying to probably go into a weight loss phase here somewhat soon, or just getting an idea of where I am, because postpartum and just very different phase of life right now. But making sure like anytime I have a meal, it's like, okay, well, let me make sure I have a protein source and I'm pairing it with carbs and I have fats and I'm having fruits and vegetables. So just paying more attention and I guess maybe trusting my intuition and my knowledge with food, that if I follow these rules and I have these healthy habits in place, then I really don't really need to track macros. But I know that it's a tool that I can utilize when I have the specific goal in mind, which is why I'm kind of gearing up into starting to track and getting that habit in place before kind of diving into that again.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, the thing that I have to skim over because I'm not going to go over 5 years of just tracking macros, but the things that kind of occurred in there, I think the way you put it is perfect. Kind of growing up in a sense when it comes to nutrition. Like if you think about how like children think of things, they think of things very like in a very binary way. Like there's a rule and this is good or this is bad, and that's how kids learn, and that's great. But at a certain point, we mature and we understand nuance. And I think it's just interesting to look back and see like where I thought I was so put together and, great in my nutrition and my way was the right way, to now look back like 6, 7 years later and be like, yeah, that was super naive. And like, there's some lessons that I would tell that person, but I learned through the process of trial and error and having multiple coaches take me through that path. But definitely think I grew up a good amount, and my mindset around tracking now, although I haven't really ever since I started this had a super extended time frame where I haven't tracked, my headspace around it is just so different. And I don't know if I'll be able to explain it well enough, but basically especially in the last episode, we talked about burnout, but like I took just a few months off of tracking very recently. And it's definitely the best I've ever felt with it. Definitely wasn't perfect, but I think that was more a byproduct of, or not even not being perfect, but not, feeling like I did my best with it. I felt like that was more a byproduct of stress and burnout than it was of my actual like reflection of my skills and my knowledge and my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't really worry or stress at all. Like a lot of times in the past, when I think about not tracking food, I get anxious and I would like, worry about what would happen, or if I'd lose control or I'd let myself go or whatever it was. And that really just wasn't the case. I was able to kind of literally just drop it and be like good with it because I was already kind of at the point where if I was tracking, I was like going through my whole day, just eating my normal spread of food and then forgetting to plug it in until the end of the day. And so now I've gotten back into a fat loss phase the past, I would say, month. It's been going really well because I'm not stressed about it. And I think the biggest thing has just been like, it's almost, macros now are almost more like just a quick reminder of like, hey, like reel it in, like you just can't have that one thing, right? And like otherwise just eat normally. And that's really it. It's like I just can't add the cookie for this diet phase when I want to add the cookie, but all the other meals look the same. Or maybe I take the starch out of my lunch, and I have some fruit instead. But that's truly it. And so I think my mindset around it is just so much more balanced, and focused on, again, nutrients, fruits, vegetables. I spent a good amount of time when I wasn't tracking trying to hit a target of 5 fruits and vegetables per day, which is hard. If you've ever tried it, it's pretty hard. And especially if you try to make the majority of those vegetables. But yeah, just have had like a good, like just a very relaxed headspace about it now. And I don't know if I'm getting this across well at all, but and also trying to pay attention to my hunger and fullness to bring it full circle. Then I said at the very, very beginning that I was very much a plate cleaner. Those habits carried through, up until still to this day, but like only the past maybe 6 months did I actually start to try paying attention to that and work on that. So that's been amazing. I've actually been doing really well, especially since we moved the past couple of weeks. Just like reinforcing new habits, and really listening to like, I'm not hungry. I'm not going to have breakfast yet. I'm going to wait. And just kind of listening to those signals. So that's been good too. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting, like from both of our conversations, kind of thinking about how you can track macros and it can go like pretty
So many
well.
different
Like,
ways.
yeah, or like it can be bad for your mental health. Like it can be good for you. It can become obsessive, but it's the same thing. Like you're still tracking macros, but it has a lot to do with your headspace and like how you view things and how you view tracking macros. And if you view it as super restrictive, and I've had clients who feel like for whatever reason, they have to like, they feel like they're filling their the rest of the day with food, or like they have this feeling of like, well, I can only eat X amount, so I'm not going to eat anything during the day. And then, oh, thankfully I made it at night. So I have all this food, but now this is too much food for me to eat because I macro
Yeah.
hoarded, like just like different things. And so like working through like mindset and like scarcity, or just like how you approach food, even though it's the exact same tool. So I think it's really interesting, just kind of how we've progressed over the years, still utilizing macros, but just having a different approach to it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because we'll often talk about like oh, macros might be good for one person, but not great for another, depending on their headspace. But I think this was interesting where you can even see how within one person over the course of time, that can fluctuate and that can
Mm-hmm.
change and be so different depending on just like the phase of life that you're in. And yeah, I think that there's just, it's a great tool. And I think everybody who tracks their food for any period of time will be able to reflect on what they've learned and how useful it is. But at the same time, like, there are times in life where it's not the time. And there are times in
Yeah.
life where it just fits in seamlessly. And so I think a good kind of takeaway for somebody who's listening to this is no matter what tool it is, whether it's a specific nutrition rule or macros or mindful eating techniques, whatever it is, don't write something off just because you had a bad experience at one point. Like, it can definitely evolve and change, and your perspective at one point might be completely just a 180 from another time. So I've definitely experienced that, and feel like I'm in a really good place now, but we'll probably talk, 5 years from now and it'll be totally different.
Yeah, we'll look back at us, be like, God, in 2022, like I had, XYZ. But yeah, I think that's a really good takeaway and a really good maybe ending point. Is that like, and I think too, like, you're allowed to change, like you're allowed to change your opinion, and you, even if you're not happy with how you're eating now, like you can still reach out to someone, like you can still utilize tools and grow as, I feel like it's weird to grow as an eater, but to grow and just kind of how you approach nutrition, and like you still have room to grow and mature. And I'm sure, more data and more research will come out, and we're going to incorporate some more things over time, or and maybe change the way we eat. But, I think that's just a really, really good takeaway from you. You had a good point.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Do we have anything else that we want to cover?
I don't think so.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I think
That was,
we got through, 7, 8, 10 years of our life pretty quickly.
yeah. And I'm really, really proud of ourselves that we kept it under 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Go us.
Woo, virtual high five. Well, guys, we hope that you enjoyed this episode and this walk down memory lane. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit, and Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope to see you back next week.